Thank you, Marina, and good evening, friends, here and on the internet. We are going to go on with our discussion about this book, Light on the Path, that, as we said, it's usually regarded as a theosophical classic, whatever that means. We call it theosophical classic, in the sense that it's held in high regard by many members. And as I said last week, it is a description of how a person who is in this process of awakening to what he or she really is, how this person perceives life and how this person acts. It is put like in rules, do this, do that. But there is a difference, as I explained briefly last week, there is a difference between a rule that is laid down, by an authority to follow, just because this authority likes that rule, and the rule that is more like a law, is what happens, is how things are. So you can either follow it or not. This is just a description of how things are. And the idea of the rules is just to call to our attention certain facts so that we can examine them and see if we find them true, and by following them, by trying to be aware of these aspects in our lives, there is any transformation. So last week we worked on the first 3 rules, or 4. The book is organized in groups of 3 rules and one more that is kind of an explanation of the other three rules. So they are in groups of 4. This week we are going to go on from the 5th rule, and if you have any question during the examination of these rules, you can wait until Marina gets the mic so we can share with everybody the question, and we can discuss it, because these rules or the topic is pretty deep, so it may be good to be able to discuss while we are examining them. So the 5th rule says, kill out all sense of separateness. The 6th one, kill out desire for sensation. And the 7th one, kill out the hunger for growth. As we said, just read like that, they seem really stern. And in many cases, they don't make sense, in the sense of what is that is left if we kill this. And again, the idea of kill out is symbolic. We really cannot kill anything in our nature. What we can do is to realize that something is wrong, it's not true, and that very discovery will set things right, just like Jesus is supposed to have said, the truth will set you free. Not your willpower, not your this or that. The fact of perceiving truth will set things right. So the first rule, kill out all sense of separateness. And the number 8, that as I said, explains a little. The rules says, yet stand alone and isolated, because nothing that is embodied, nothing that is conscious of separation, nothing that is out of the eternal can aid you. We have to remember the context in which this is being said. It's not that in normal life we have to be isolated, or nobody can help us, or we cannot help anybody. This is talking about the endeavor to perceive what we really are. And although we, at certain level, we all can help each other, by by talking, discussing, or sharing our experience, or in different ways, even in non-conceptual ways, just with our love. And although there may be, we can help each other in those ways, this help is superficial in a sense. It is us who have to discover what we really are. And nobody from outside can make us do it. Otherwise, all the enlightened beings should do is just to come and make us, each one of us, realize what we are, and then we would be all enlightened. And the Buddha came, and Jesus, and many other sages, and they did all they could to point out the truth. But it is us, the ones that have to realize the truth. Nobody can do it for us. There is, of course, this concept of, the grace of the Guru. But in all the traditions that are more in tune with the Theosophical approach, the grace of the Guru is not something that comes really from the Guru as a person that is outside. It is the grace of truth, which the Guru is embodying. But if we cannot perceive truth, then we cannot receive the grace of the Guru. So the idea is, we have to kill all sense of being separate from others, and we are going to see why. But at the same time, we have to attain that sense of inner poise and that sense of independence, where we do not depend on external things. Not that we are aloof and insensitive, but we can only be free when we don't depend on what happens around. Because as long as we depend or are too affected by what happens around, then the circumstances will always taint our perception, or will make us do something that may not be the right thing. We have to try to reach this state where we can determine for ourselves what we think is the right thing to do, and try to do it. We may be wrong, and probably we will be wrong most of the cases, but our earnest endeavor purifies the perception. So the idea is that although we have to encourage the sense of being one with everything, at the same time we have to be independent of everything that is outside. Because nothing that is, it says nothing that is not the eternal can aid you or help you. The idea is that we will see this in other parts of the book, but the idea is that only the real will transform you. So with the eternal, this book refers to what is real. What is real cannot change, cannot decay, cannot disappear. So that's a way that this book has to refer to the real. So try to put your eyes in what is real in you, what is real in life. And that is the only thing that will help you realize the real. It's if you interpret it in this way, it is obvious. Try to see the real. Now, to see the real, to see the eternal, is not so easy, in the sense that we can only see the real we can see the real as we are free from all these external influences, and also internal influences. When we are upset, are we willing to see what is real? Usually we are upset and we are caught in our own suffering, and it's difficult to see what is real there. Many times we don't even want to. We just want, the suffering to go and do something that is unjust, but we don't care. We just want the suffering to be removed. So to try to see the real as a philosophical idea is easy, and it may be, desirable for us, but we should try always to see the real. Yeah.
Would you say that, how would you define the real? Would you say it is like to see things as they really are? How else would you define the real?
Ed wants to answer, I think. Yeah, he raised.
Well, I think they call the real the eternal. That's sort of a synonym. And eternal just means unchanging. In other words, out of time, out of duality, out of this and that, out of good or bad, up and down, the way the mind works. That which is unchanging is usually defined as the real.
Yeah. So in psychological terms, I would say that something that Light on the Path recommends in some of the pages we are going to see later, you know, what is real, what is eternal in us, or at least what is the aspect in us that is not changeable, doesn't change, and that we can reach at the moment. Obviously, our bodily sensations change. So it's not by following the sensations that we are going to see the real. I'm not talking against sensations. We are going to see that later. But we know that our sensations change. And sometimes we like something, and that's not necessarily good. You know, we like bad food, or we like things that are not healthy. Or we may not like something, but that's actually the right thing to do, or something good. So our sensations, since they are changing, they are not something we can trust to perceive the truth. Then what about our emotions? Our emotions, again, are constantly changing. The same with our ideas. Our ideas are always changing. Now, our ideas and thoughts and all that. Now, the silence that is behind, the silence doesn't change. Would you say that your silence when you were a child is different from your silence as an adult, or the silence of an Indian person is different from the silence of an American person? You know, the silence, to me, it's something that is beyond the differentiations, at least at the level that most of us can reach. You know, of course, there are more transcendental levels behind that. But whenever there is something going on, if we can, instead of trying to rely on external changes or external people or even internal, if we can reach that place of silence, then our consciousness gets in tune with an ability that it's closer to the perception of truth. It's not a formula. It's not that you keep quiet and then always will know what to do, but I think...
I have a question about energy. Energy takes form. I mean, the energy meaning, I guess, motion. But it's constant, as far as we know. But it takes different forms. Is that real? I mean, is that the real?
I would think that, yeah, I would think that energy is, again, part of the things that change. You know, in Theosophy, we talk about three principles: consciousness, energy, and matter. Energy is what unites matter and consciousness, or connects, or puts them in touch. Consciousness as a changing factor, you know, are not the pure consciousness of the eternal, which is beyond consciousness or unconsciousness. Consciousness, as we know it, is always changing. The energy is also, and matter also. So I think the idea would be to go beyond these three things. It's not that you don't have a body, you don't have energy, you don't have consciousness, but your perception, it's like goes beyond them, at least on the manifested planes that we know, you know, from them, in theosophical terms, from the mental plane below, which for us are the manifested planes. So I would say that the eternal is beyond any of the characteristics we usually know. From that point of view, you know, everything can be seen in different ways. The eternal is everywhere, always, you know, but from this point of view. Then the second rule that says kill out desire for sensation says learn, the eighth rule explains, learn from sensation and observe it, because only so can you commence the science of self-knowledge and plant your foot on the first step of the ladder. So the rule says kill out desire for sensation, not kill out sensation. This is a mistake that many times is done in different religious paths. They think that the idea is not to feel anything, to kill the sensation. So there are different techniques to become insensitive, physically, emotionally, mentally, or going into trances. Or what the Light on the Path says is kill out the desire for sensation. Because again, everything in the universe produces a sensation on the body. The sensation itself is not a problem. The problem is when we act based on the sensations, as we were saying. When we act based on the sensations, then we are a slave of what the body likes, not of what the real perception says that is right or wrong. Also, when we hunger for sensations, sensations as we know them can be only fed through the personality, through our body and our emotional and mental nature. So when our consciousness craves for sensation, is constantly focusing on the body. So this is something that happens in meditation, as we discussed a little bit last week also. A meditation where you get to a point of silence is very austere. It's not a meditation where you are excited or feel this or that. In fact, in many traditions, even a sense of bliss is regarded as an obstacle for the perception of truth. And when in meditation you really have a sense of deep silence, you can see how a feeling of happiness is troublesome, or you don't need, it's too dense. You don't even want to have that because the sense of silence is purer. But the question is that for our consciousness to be able to perceive this silence has to start getting less attached to the sensations. First to the grosser sensations, and then little by little that purifies and begins to be more sensitive to, subtler sensations. In Hinduism, they talk about sattva. Sattva is one of the gunas, which means characteristics of nature. You have three gunas, three characteristics, inertia, activity, and this equilibrium or balance, peace. And they say our perception, our bodies are either too tamasic, which means, dull, or too rajasic, which means over, with a lot of excitement, excitation. And in either way, either situation, we cannot perceive what is subtle. So we have to turn our nature more sattvic. It's, purer. And only then we can start perceiving the spiritual, because then our perception is subtle enough to perceive that. So the idea is we should, little by little, start getting beyond the desire for sensations. Don't shun the sensation, don't think that the sensation itself is bad. It's just, I guess, like the difference between enjoyment and pleasure, in a sense. Enjoyment, there is you have a meal, the meal is good, it's very tasty, and you can enjoy it. Now, if you have a crave for that, then you are a slave of that. So you go to a restaurant, it was very nice, you enjoyed it. You go next time, and then if the food is not as good as before, then you get upset, or you want to talk to the chef, or, because you are expecting that to be repeated. You are clinging to the memory of that sensation, and you want to repeat the sensation. Now, if you are not clinging to the sensation, there was food, you enjoyed it, you go next time, the food is not so good, you can eat it anyway, and it say, okay, it was good, it wasn't very good now, maybe you don't go back there again, but it's not a big deal. You know what I mean? So the sensations are okay, the problem is to crave for the sensations. But as Light on the Path says, we have to learn from the sensations. So when there is, even if there is this craving, we don't have to look to other side or try to repress them. We have to observe them and learn from them. There is something that we want to eat, but we know that it's not good for us, and yet we eat it. Okay, observe the whole thing. Observe the craving. Observe the sensations that produces in you. Observe how after you ate it, the sensation disappeared, just like if you have never ate it, in the first place. Observe the whole cycle and do it as many times as it is needed, and you will see how the sensation will dissolve by itself. So, it's a question of learning from it and seeing the trick, because the sensations are, when we are not aware of them, then we are trapped by them. But as soon as we begin to be aware, then we recognize them as something that, is not ourselves. So we can either choose to do something or not to do it. And then the third rule that says kill out the hunger for growth. And the eighth one says, but grow as the flower grows, unconsciously, but eagerly anxious to open its soul to the air. So must you press forward to open your soul to the eternal. But it must be the eternal that draws forth your strength and beauty, and not the desire of growth. For in one case, you develop in the luxury of purity. In the other, you harden by the forcible passion for personal stature. So the idea is this hunger for growth. I remember Nisargadatta once said that in many instances, the desires of a yogi or a person that regards himself as a yogi are that yogi has far more ambition in the bad sense than a person that wants to succeed in the world. Because there is something like ambition for personal growth in the spiritual field. So maybe a person discovers that material things will not bring eternal happiness or lasting happiness even during our life, that they come and go, that sensations are always changing. So they may start turning their eyes to something that they think is more lasting in producing happiness, and so they turn to the spiritual, but with the same personal ambition to gain something for the psychological self. When the problem is the psychological self itself, that's the problem, is that we are identified with the psychological self, and the psychological self cannot be satisfied, because the very essence of the psychological self is that it doesn't exist. So it exists as long as we protect it, we feed it, but when we stop doing that, it begins to die. And it's not going to die without fighting, and without producing certain suffering. So if we think that we can attain happiness by acquiring anything, whether material or spiritual, then we are still working with the same pattern. Real happiness is the absence of self, of the lower self. And all these teachings go in that direction, to recognize what we really are, and therefore to see what we are not. That we are the eternal and we are not the psychological self. So the idea, the hunger for growth, can be also just our lower self trying to perpetuate itself. So it says, yeah, of course you have to press forward in a sense. Virya, which means energy, is one of the things that are necessary to develop in life. You know, if we are lazy, we cannot do anything in any field. But why would we have this enthusiasm, this energy, this passion, as Krishnamurti used to call it, for the spiritual life? Here it says it should be the eternal which is bringing you there, not you going to trying to get something, which is a subtle difference. But I guess when we stop thinking about our progress and yet we are willing to do the best we can, we are more or less in that direction. You know, where it's the eagerness for the truth itself that is drawing us to do something more than the personal benefit we can get from it.
When you were speaking, I was just thinking how that drawing forth from someone is like for me anyway, I experience it as like a submission to something. So in a way, it's like letting go and letting something else, but it is a drawing forth. But I also have to let go enough for that to happen.
Yeah, that's something important. I mean, for many people on the spiritual path, it's appealing, the idea of acquiring wisdom or a virtue or peace, or because it's the self that wants to acquire. But when it comes to the idea of dying, of letting go, of, you know, thy will be done, not mine, then we have a hard time, which is natural, you know, because that means that we are not acquiring anything from the point of view of the lower self. And we will see here in Light on the Path. Light on the Path is very explicit, and it talks about the dissolution of the lower self. Only with the dissolution of the lower self, the real can be there. It's just like in a dream. Let's suppose we are dreaming, and we are dreaming that we are a Roman, you know, soldier, and we have this and that. We are in a battle, and then we start wondering what the real is. And somebody comes and says, if you want to know who you really are, you are in a dream. You want to know who you really are, you have to wake up. But to wake up means you stop being this Roman soldier, which you are not. You know, you have to die. And then you will say, oh, silly me, I was dreaming. But when you are in the dream, that's what you think you are. And the only way to discover what you really are, the person that is sleeping, you know, really, relatively speaking, you in the dream have to die, disappear, be dissolved. Then there is no sense of dissolution when you wake up. You say, oh, this is what I always was. I was just dreaming. So when the lower self disappears, is dissolved, the enlightened person says, this is what I was always, what I was always, you know. I never stopped being this, but I was confused. I thought I was a lower self. And now I'm released from that. But the process of dissolving the lower self, when we cannot see what we really are, produces suffering, fear, and all that in the lower self. So yes, the idea of surrender and letting go, it's very important in the spiritual path, and very difficult usually. So there is one more thing that I wanted to read from this set of rules. Remember that rule that we talked about?
Just a comment.
Oh, yeah.
The reason why it's so difficult for the lower self to surrender is because the lower self is imaginary.
Mm-hmm.
So how can an imaginary lower self do anything?
Mm-hmm.
But it can,
yeah.
But it can seem to try and fail a lot.
Yeah, that's a way we can see it. At the same time, we can, if we make this comparison with the idea of the dream is also, you know, an illusion. So what is there that wakes up?
Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the dream just ceases. Yeah. Well, regarding the kill out all sense of separateness, there is a note that I think is very interesting, and I wanted to share with you. It says, do not fancy that you can stand aside from the bad or the foolish. They are yourself, but if you allow the idea of separateness from any evil thing or person to grow up within you, by doing so, you create karma which will bind you to that thing or person, till your soul recognizes that it cannot be isolated. If you turn with horror from it, it will cling the more closely to you. The self-righteous person makes for himself a bed of mire. So the idea is that, we are not different from whatever is foolish or evil. And this is something really difficult. I mean, at a certain stage, this is something really difficult to work on. Maybe when we are, still, when we don't have really an ideal of trying to discover what is the right, the good, the truth. It's okay. We don't necessarily feel too different from others. But when we are really working hard to try to strive towards what is good, then many times there is like a rejection that appears towards what is wrong. Just like, for example, a person that has been drinking and is quitting, that habit. Once the person really can overcome the desire for drinking, many times what happens is that there is the development of a strong, disgust for drinking, for example. It may be that he's trying to generate an idea of himself as, separate from that habit. So there is this rejection. I'm not this anymore. There may be also fear of getting, drawn into that again. For whatever reason, when a person is fighting a habit, many times he develops, a reaction against that. And I think the same happens with this when we are really, trying to perceive what is right and trying to let go of what is wrong. It may appear this strong rejection of what is wrong or what is foolish, but that again is part of the process. But we have to overcome it. We have to see that that's also an illusion, that we are not different. It depends, on how our path is being developed.
And I think that after that stage, there is more of a sense of compassion. When you said that there is more understanding, and we can see that we are not different. But maybe we can see we're different. And I was looking at the Dalai Lama talk recently, and I was seeing that again of the importance of compassion and how they were able to deal in the difficult situations they had to deal with, and seeing the other human being, as he said, condemning the sin but not the sinner.
Mm-hmm.
So
So this is really tricky from a certain point of view, or because of how our minds work is tricky, because for example, a person that doesn't know anything about something, let's suppose I don't know anything about art or about music. So I hear a music that is very good quality music and one that is not good at all and can be made in 2 minutes. And probably to me they are nice, both. I don't have any sense that allows me to discriminate what music is nice or not. Or a painting, I don't have a sense or the knowledge or the training or the sensitivity to discriminate what is a good painting and what is not. So for me, it's easy to say, oh, everything is art, everything is good, everything is beautiful, Now, a person that developed the ability, the knowledge, or the ability to see, and that person may notice, no, yeah, you can say that if you want, but this is not good, and this is, I don't want to use certain words, and this is a piece of art, and there is a clear difference for me. Now, if that person can, having that discernment, that clear view, can go beyond that and see how they may be expressions of art, nevertheless. These two people will eventually say, oh, everything is art, but there is a universe, a difference, a huge difference between these two people. The one that says everything is fine because doesn't perceive the differences, and the one that says everything is fine because it raised above the differences. It saw the differences and it understood what was beyond. So with good and evil is more or less the same. It's easy to say everything is good if we don't have discernment. It's very difficult to say everything is good when we see the difference, the sharp difference between good and evil. And if we transcend that, then we really have an understanding of things. So, all these things, that's why the rules are, they are not things that can be followed just like do this and don't do that. Our nature is very complex. Let us go on. The next set of rules says, desire only that which is within you. Desire only that which is beyond you. Desire only that which is unattainable. So let me read it with the fourth rule there and see what it says. It says, desire only that which is within you, because within you is the light of the world, the only light that can be shed upon the path. So the idea is, again, if we are going to see, that perception is inside us, in a sense, because then it says, desire only that which is beyond you. But the idea of inside is as opposed to outside. What will give you the truth doesn't depend so much on external situations, external actions, people. It's like Shankaracharya in the Viveka Chudamani, the crest jewel of wisdom. He says the problem in a person that is not enlightened is that person cannot perceive truth. Therefore, the only thing that will set things right is a perception of truth. No action in themselves, in itself, can help, because the problem is not a problem of actions. It's a problem of perceptions. So we can do whatever we want to do, but if the perception is wrong, the action will be wrong. So the idea is nothing that is outside in itself will produce this inner perception. We have to find it in ourselves. And in the Mahatma letters, one of Blavatsky's teachers says something like that, and he says the perception of the higher realities cannot be conveyed in any way. If that were the case, then we would go out in the world and just write books, manuals about how you can do to perceive reality, and you can study those as you study, grammar or whatever. So he says that to really perceive the higher, you have to do it. There are, of course, conditions that will allow you to see the higher. If you are caught, in the conditioning of your mind, for example, it's really difficult to perceive the truth. But ultimately speaking, nothing external will produce it. So that's the first idea. But then it says, desire only that which is beyond you. And it says, it is beyond you because when you reach it, you have lost yourself. So again, it's like, okay, is that perception part of our mind, or our sensations, or our emotions? It is beyond me as the lower self, beyond me as the one that makes the effort. When the one that makes the effort ceases, then the truth is there. So this desire only that which is beyond you is to know there is something that we can do up to a certain point. But after that point, we, as the maker of the effort, is part of the illusion. It's like if you try to make a lake calm by means of the wind. The very fact that you are using wind will make ripples in the lake. So at some point, the wind has to cease. Maybe there is a wind that comes from one side and then you blow the other side, and maybe you can produce certain calmness in the lake, but eventually all wind has to disappear because the wind is the cause of the ripples. So here again, that which is truth is beyond you, beyond us, as the lower selves. And then it says, desire only that which is unattainable. And it says, it is unattainable because it forever recedes. You will enter the light, but you will never touch the flame. To me here is talking about even a higher individuality. We are talking about not only that is beyond our psychological self, but is beyond any consciousness, any sense of being, even the eternal. What really is beyond any particular consciousness. Because consciousness, if there is an entity that is conscious of something, no matter how pure that entity is, no matter how boundless the entity is, there is a difference, there is a duality there. So it is always unattainable because you can never perceive it. You are, and the you is not there anymore. There is this state, or then there is consciousness with you. It's maybe a little convoluted to explain, but...
Well, I can think of two reasons it's unattainable. One, it's not an object. Mm-hmm. It has no qualities. Only objects have qualities. Mm-hmm. And the other reason it's unattainable is because you've already attained it. Mm-hmm. It's who you are. It's what everything is. Mm-hmm. Therefore, you can't attain it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say it's what everything is. And as long as you, as a consciousness, is there, like what it says here, you will enter the light, but you will never touch the flame as long as you are there, no matter how pure that you is. Then when all kind of you ends, then it is what it is. And there is nothing to be attained there. There is nobody who can attain. Then I think we can go through the following set. It says, desire power ardently, desire peace fervently, or fervently you say, desire possessions above all. And let us read now with the comments. It says, desire power ardently, but that power which the disciple shall covet is that which shall make him appear as nothing in the eyes of men. So we can interpret that in several ways, but to me it's still kind of enigmatic. You know, why it is called a power that will make a person to appear like nothing to other people. Because usually, you know, spiritual people, there is a group in humanity that appreciates spiritual people, enlightened beings. So I wouldn't say that an enlightened being is somebody that appears like nothing to the eyes of others, unless we are talking about this ability of not having a self, a personal self, which many people that met really enlightened beings, they say, you know, there is not sense of ego in them. So maybe we could interpret that in that way, and there are several others. But why is it a power? Because this says desire power ardently, and then that power is that lack of ego, if we interpret it in that way. And
Yeah, I think the power that you should desire is basically the power of the universe, that which moves and creates the universe. And therefore, it's not a personal power, it's just seeing that you are one with that power. You're not separate from that power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is an approach. So when there is really a perception of unity, because that's a problem, you know, when we talk about realizing that we are one with everybody, we tend to still think, yeah, we are one with everything, but I'm still me. To be one with everything, it means that this personality is not more important than that personality, that personality. So to be one with everything means I am not this, I don't care about this more than about some other thing. Also, from the point of view of the masters and the path, it could be that we can only help humanity when we are beyond the illusion of the ego. You know, enlightened beings really transform the consciousness of humanity to a certain extent, just because they really freed from the idea of being the ego. So we all can help each other a little, and that's part of what we have to do. It's not that we should think that whatever we do in this state is useless. But there is a much higher power to help humanity when we get rid of the ego. And maybe that's another option that this could be referring to. Yeah, there is a question from the internet.
There's a question from the internet, and this relates to something you were talking about earlier with art.
That's fine.
If someone is naive and gives a quote-unquote bad piece of art, can you still appreciate the intention, or is it better not to give anything at all?
No, I was taking that example only, you know, kind of as a joke. I think we can always appreciate the intention. And it doesn't matter, you know, after all, we shouldn't work for the result. You know, we should just do things if that is part of the expression of creativity. It doesn't matter if it is good art or not, you know, from that point of view. I was just using it to talk about, you know, it's easy to say everything is good when we don't have the ability to discern. It is much harder when we do have the ability to discern. But eventually we can keep the ability to discern and yet see beyond, where we can see how or why. Although things are different, anyway, everything is good from a higher perspective. So that was more or less the idea. So coming back to this, the second, that's regarding power. Then desire peace fervently. And it says, the peace you shall desire is that sacred peace which nothing can disturb, and in which the soul grows as does the holy flower upon the still lagoons. You know, when we think about acquiring peace, obviously the first thing we try to do is to begin to modify the environment. So to be in a place where there is no conflict, or with people where there is no conflict, or with beautiful nature, or where there is no pollution, or whatever we can think of. So we think that peace, we can attain peace when everything is perfect around. But the peace, the real peace, is a peace that can stay there in any condition, in any situation. Again, remember that we are talking here about, the real, and for the time being we may not be perceiving this, and it shouldn't bring the idea of, oh, that's impossible for me, I'm so far from that, or this is the direction towards we have to go. And of course the reality is that most of us need certain harmony in the environment and all that. That's normal, but we have to know that that there is a possibility of attaining a peace that is beyond anything, that is independent of anything. So we can start walking in that direction in whatever situation we are at, without feeling either powerless because we cannot do it at the moment, or without feeling frustrated. I think that ideals are very important because they can inspire us, they can show us what we really are but we are not perceiving, they can show us a direction. But at the same time, ideals can become a hindrance if we feel, oh, this is how it should be, I am not like that, then I'm useless, or I cannot do this, or I cannot do that. So we shouldn't read all these things in that spirit. So let's read this as the description of the beauty of the perfection, which is ourselves. But just like the gold that has some impurities, the gold is never really tainted, but the impurities are there. So when you blend it, the impurities go away, and the gold, can be solidified again without any impurity. So the impurities are not really ours, but they are there. So as we get rid of them, then the gold will shine without any opposition or anything to taint it. And the last one says, desire possessions above all. And I think it's more or less similar to what Ed was saying, because it says, but those possessions must belong to the pure soul only, and be possessed, therefore, by all pure souls equally, and thus be the special property of the whole only when united. So it's the idea, again, there must be a reason why they call it possessions. But the idea is that those possessions are the whole, and that can, as this says, thus can be the special property of the whole only when united. As long as we see ourselves as a part separate from the whole, we cannot possess the truth. Possess, just a way of saying that to possess the truth is when we stop being a separate entity that can possess something. Then we are the truth. We are the whole. So as you see, the spiritual books many times work with paradoxes, because the idea is to give food for meditation and to see things in a deeper way. If they make complete sense on the intellectual level, we may stop there and say, oh yeah, I get it, and this is fine. But when they are put in a way that is a little more symbolic or challenging, then we may make the effort to actually perceive what it's been said there, more than staying with the concept or the words.
Would you be willing to read again just the the actual rules and the, through the whole, whatever you covered tonight, all
Okay.
in one piece.
I don't know, including, you mean the 3 rules or including the 4th one? 4th one too. Which is, okay, it's a little longer, but that's fine. So we can include the first also, the first rules, what we cover so far. It says, kill out ambition, kill out desire of life, kill out desire of comfort. But work as those work who are ambitious. Respect life as those do who desire it. Be happy as those are who live for happiness. Kill out all sense of separateness. Kill out desire for sensation. Kill out the hunger for growth. Yet stand alone and isolated, because nothing that is embodied, nothing that is conscious of separation, nothing that is out of the eternal can aid you. Learn from sensation and observe it, because only so you can commence the science of self-knowledge and plant your foot on the first step of the ladder. Grow as a flower grows, unconsciously, but eagerly anxious to open its soul to the air. So must you press forward to open your soul to the eternal, but it must be the eternal that draws forth your strength and beauty, not the desire of growth. For in the one case you develop in the luxury of purity, in the other you harden by the forcible passion of personal stature. Desire only that which is within you. Desire only that which is beyond you. Desire only that which is unattainable. For within you is the light of the world, the only light that can be shed upon the path. If you are unable to perceive it within you, it is useless to look for it elsewhere. It is beyond you because when you reach it, you have lost yourself. It is unattainable because it forever recedes. You will enter the light, but you will never touch the flame. Desire power ardently. Desire peace fervently. Desire possessions above all. But those possessions must belong to the pure soul only, and be possessed therefore by all pure souls equally, and thus be the special property of the whole only when united. Hunger for such possessions as can be held by the pure soul, that you may accumulate wealth for that united spirit of life, which is your only true self. The peace you shall desire is that sacred peace which nothing can disturb, and in which the soul grows, as does the holy flower upon the still lagoons. And that power, which the disciple shall covet, is that which shall make him appear as nothing in the eyes of men. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.